is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update. Well, the Packers have won 4 straight, and in doing so, have pulled themselves out of a midseason slump that saw back-to-back losses to Carolina and the Eagles. Back then, people were calling for Matt LaFleur's job. National media all over Jordan Love for his performance. LaFleur says that they didn't let that affect them.
It's like the National Football League, and I think you just got to be resilient. You got to keep fighting, and you got to ignore all the outside noise. I really only care about what's going on in that room, our team, our players within our building, and all that other stuff.
LaFleur added that all the loud noise around the team that's losing is something that comes with the territory.
We understand. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse to be part of the National Football League in that regard. You can be highly criticized. It is what it is. So that's the way to not be criticized. It's the way to win.
Packers off today. They'll be back on the field tomorrow for practice as they get ready for a trip to face the Broncos. Denver tied for the best record in the NFL at 11-2. They won 10 straight. Kick on Sundays at 3:25.
They know Rural Mutual Insurance is the #1 farm insurer. Did you know they also offer competitive home, auto, business, and life insurance? They make it convenient to bundle your insurance while saving you time and money. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn more.
Well, the Badgers are going to head to Nebraska today, so they'll take on the number 23 Cornhuskers tomorrow. Nebraska unbeaten at 9-0 and in the national rankings for the first time since 2018. Wisconsin comes in 7-2, 1-0 in Big Ten play. Tomorrow is set for 8 p.m. And the Bucs are off until Thursday. That's when they'll face Boston at Fiserv Forum. Milwaukee just 10-15 on the year. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heilprin.
And it's not to excuse A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown sucked tonight, too. I mean, the drop passes were ridiculous. But the Kevin Patullo stuff and the play calling and everybody trying to find every other reason for why this offense isn't working. The quarterback stinks right now. Yep. I don't know what else to say. It's beyond obvious. I hope everybody realizes it. If you still don't believe that's true, you're living in denial. I mean, Troy Aikman tonight skewering Jalen Hurts. I mean, talking about all the balls all the reads that he's missing. Inaccurate throw here. Inaccurate throw there. And you cannot win with this kind of quarterback play. And I don't know, maybe he'll come out of it. I mean, this, I guess, could turn around in his career. But this season, this guy has been the biggest problem. He's stunk all year. He's been god-awful the last 5 weeks. And I'm tired of people acting like that's not the reality.
Hurts keeps, throws, batted up and picked off, intercepted. And the Chargers win the ball game. Jefferson with the pick. Cam Hart tipped it.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
That's just good sports radio. That's from the Eagles postgame on WIP. Our friend Tom Kelly, who's been on the show, he's done an Eye on the Enemy segment or two with us over the last couple of years, anytime the Packers play the Eagles. Friend of show, friend of network. Ben Kenny sent me that clip this morning. I saw someone aggregated it on Twitter. That's, by the way, what a postgame show is supposed to sound like when your team is good and they lose. That's what I can't tell you how often, and when I say how often, maybe I do this 2 or 3 times a year, where the Packers aren't playing, or maybe the Packers are playing on a Monday or a Thursday night, and I watch an NFC North game, naturally pulling against the Vikings or the Bears, because I'm a Packers fan and owner. So that's what I do. I want our division rivals to lose. Makes life easier for the Packers, and screw them. That's why. And I can't tell you, how many times a year, probably 2 or 3, I probably could tell you, where I watch the Vikings or the Bears just blow a game. So I turn on K-Fan or I turn on 670 and I'm like, I want to hear a good old-fashioned beating right now. I want to hear 2 guys who are pissed off and are going to light up a coach or light up that's what I want. And I never get it. It's always like, well, they did some good things in the third quarter. It's like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, this is what it should sound like.
I hope everybody realizes it. If you still don't believe that's true, you're living in denial.
I love it. I love that clip. That's Tom Kelly. I want to say a couple things about Monday Night Football last night. Because it's live radio, I think we should talk about anything that happened last night. The rest of the show then is going to be Packers. Mike Clemens will be here at 5:30. I have a topic that started on the morning show, spilled over to Bill's show, and I want to bring it to the evening drive show too. It's courtesy of Zach Heilprin. I think it's brilliant. I couldn't believe it hadn't come up recently. a Packers topic. So we'll get into that before too long here in a couple of minutes. And a little hot stove talk. Is anyone a little cold? It's been pretty chilly this week. We've been in the single digits. How about some nice hot stove talk to warm up? Yeah, that sounds good. Another brewer named in trade rumors now. So we'll get into that before the end of the show as well. My name is Grant Bills. It's the Wisco Sports Show. If you're new, appreciate you being here. And you can text and call anytime, 608-321-1670. And especially talk Packers tonight. Maybe if you have some baseball takes tonight would be a good night for that as well, but we'll mostly be Packers. I do just have a couple of things to say about Monday Night Football last night. I really didn't have a crazy rooting interest. As a Packers fan and owner, I know that we're pulling against the Eagles because they are competition in the NFC field, and them losing a couple games would be good because it would make it more easier or more likely for the Packers to maybe get the 1 seed, which is in play if they have a really good final month here. And they've won 4 in a row, as you heard Zach mention in the update. But I wasn't sitting in front of the TV, like pounding my entertainment center and my nightstand, like rooting for the Chargers. I actually got pretty annoyed watching the Chargers. I know that they're banged up, and I know that Justin Herbert's banged up, but I'm like, God, sometimes you hear everyone glaze Justin Herbert, and then sometimes I watch him. I'm like, why do I not get anything from this? Why do I never feel anything from this? But not the point. We're watching the Eagles. And again, I didn't really have a rooting interest. I did have a fantasy football rooting interest. I tell you this for a reason. It's because I have Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, and Jake Elliott starting on my team. Now, Dallas Goedert's a fine tight end. I do want credit for the second straight year. I drafted Tucker Kraft in a pretty good spot, and he was a complete badass. He was just catching touchdowns and racking up yards every week, and then he got hurt. So I did not come into this year thinking I want every Eagles player, but that's kind of how it turned out. And last night I needed like 30 combined points between the four. Like it was mostly a shoo-in unless something catastrophic happened. And I'm sitting there watching Jalen Hurts pee down his leg over and over again. And then watching Jake Elliott miss what was a 48-yarder before halftime. I'm like, man, you got to be kidding me. And then late in the game, watching A.J. Brown drop Jalen Hurts' best throw of the night, which would have been a touchdown. I know you're all concerned. I'll close the circuit here. I did win in fantasy, but it was maddening to watch. Like, you idiots. Watching the Eagles last night gave me the feeling that I get when I watch the Brewers and they continue to load guys on base and then find ways not to score. It's like, you guys are right there. You're so close. Like, it's a little maddening, right? When you watch your baseball team play that way. That's how it felt to watch the Eagles. I find them to be a hilarious outfit. What a hilarious football team. And this is the second time now in 3 years that this has happened, where they get off to a good start and they're in a good position and they're going to make the playoffs. And we, assuming and betting against a complete and total meltdown in the final month, the Eagles will be in the playoffs. But they were in the playoffs 2 years ago, and then they get blasted out in the first round by the Buccaneers. It was just clear that they didn't have it. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be playing football is what it looked like. They didn't have any interest in tackling. They just kind of gave up. And then last year they win the Super Bowl, and the overwhelming takeaway in that game was, you know who the Super Bowl MVP was? It is Howie Roseman for putting together this roster. What an overwhelming roster, especially on defense. But let's not act like this offense isn't also really good. Sure, their O-line took a little bit of a step back and they're injured this year, but which team wouldn't want A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? And Dallas Goedert would be the starting tight end on a lot of teams, not on all, but he's really good. Saquon Barkley is awesome, even if he hasn't been as prolific statistically as he was last year. Like, this team is a wagon. And I watch them, I'm like, I just think they all hate each other. Like, do they like playing? I don't think they like playing football. It's hilarious. And every once in a while in sports, you'll have a team that probably happens most often in basketball, but it happens in baseball too, not to cross sports, where you're like, yeah, on paper, this team should be the best. They have the highest payroll, or they've collected the most star players, and like getting off the bus or just looking at the game on a spreadsheet, this team should win. But for now, until data centers and AI and robot umps take over the thing, this game is still played by humans. And the human element is very real. And the Eagles are more talented than just about every team that they play. And then I watch them. I'm like, oh, turns out it's hard to win football games when you hate all of your teammates. And the wide receivers seemingly don't like the quarterback. It's very reminiscent of Russell Wilson in Seattle, where it's like he runs around and he struggles to play in structure and he's late on throws and he doesn't attack the middle of the field. And the wide receivers are like, bro. And the O-line is like, dude, please get rid of the ball. Help us out a little bit here. You know what I mean? I just find them hilarious. And it has to be a maddening experience for Eagles fans knowing that this roster is awesome. Our division is super winnable. Can you guys figure it out?
With this kind of quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe he'll come out of it. I mean, this, I guess, could turn around in his career. But
this is an
season,
awesome rant.
This guy has been the biggest problem. He's stunk all year. He's been god-awful the last 5 weeks. And I'm tired of people acting like that's not the reality.
That's how a post-game show should sound. And by the way, before we get into the Packers, a good lesson watching both the Eagles and the Chargers last night, but especially the Eagles, Packers fans. Whenever you find yourself questioning, whenever you're frustrated, God, I hate my coach. God, I don't know that my quarterback's good enough. God, my GM is a dunce. Why did he draft this guy? Or why did he sign this guy? And our defense, the scheme is maddening. We get so caught up in our bubble of our team and all the things that we don't like about our team. I implore you, just watch a couple of other games a week. Because the league is constantly giving us examples of, they probably don't feel that great about their coach at the moment either. Yeah, their defensive scheme probably annoys it. Like, I don't know that any fan base is ever happy. You know what I mean? Well, the Rams are having a great year. They lost to the Panthers last week. Like, we can be so insulated and so stuck in our little, fan base bubble that we fail to realize that a lot of fan bases are having the same complaints or the same concerns or the same reservations that we're having. And that doesn't make our complaints or our reservations invalid. It just means that's kind of part of the sporting experience. Good games that are followed by bad games, good coaching moments that are followed by bad, like just a little bit of perspective, a little dash or kick of perspective. You don't have to watch every single NFL game, and you don't need to subscribe to Red Zone and, Sunday NFL Ticket, which I think is on YouTube TV. You don't need to see every game, but just if you really love the Packers and you're really invested in the Packers, it is worthwhile every week to just watch a couple of other games just to understand, like, oh yeah, other coaches maybe do dumb things and other quarterbacks also throw picks. Imagine that. Jalen Hurts, by the way, 4 picks last night, matching Jordan Love's season total. Not sure if I can trust Jordan Love. It's not just that he throws interceptions. They're the worst you've ever seen, as opposed to Jalen Hurts' interceptions last night, which were all okay. The classic acceptable interception. I just don't get it. Watch other games. It's a great bit of perspective. Now, the Packers, a topic that Zach Heilprin brought up this morning, and I can't believe Zach is an outstanding host and a great sports mind. He's been filling in for Ebo. This is no rip on Zach. But I came in this morning. He's hosting the morning show, and Kate's in here, and I'm in here all trying to help out, and Ebo will be back tomorrow. And Zach goes, Grant, do you think Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst have done enough to warrant contract extensions this offseason? And Zach asked me, and I went, oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a thing we were talking about not that long ago. Because remember, Ed Policy coming into this year said, well, we're not going to have a coach or a general manager in a lame duck year. Meaning at the end of this year, barring a change in perspective or a change in game plan from Ed Policy, head coach and GM, or head coach or GM, maybe, I don't know, maybe Ed Policy likes one and not the other, will either be relieved of their duties or extended. And this has been a conversation throughout the season, mostly when the team hasn't been playing well, which is fair. I'm not saying that's dumb. We change gears so often during the season, which is good. It's fun. That's how sports radio is supposed to be. It's a daily talk show. We're talking about the state of the Packers today. If I came in every day and was like, yeah, Jordan Love didn't look good Sunday, check back with me in 2 months. I'll really be able to tell you how the season ends. It's a daily talk show. So we're going to bend into it. There's going to be peaks and valleys, of course. And the season has taken a lot of different peaks and valleys. After the Washington win, they're 2-0. It literally felt like it was the Packers and the rest of the NFL. You remember this? The meme of the horse running on the beach in the sunset? Like, it just like, this is what it feels like to, put in a 6 milligram Zyn or whatever. It's just like the best feeling ever. That's what it felt like being a Packers fan after week 2. You felt just like a stallion running on a beach as the sunset goes down, the wind in your hair. Like, it was incredible. It was the Packers and everybody else. We didn't have a care in the world. And then they lose to Cleveland and they tie Dallas. And it's like, wow, did Jerry Jones have a point about Micah Parsons? I mean, man, they gave him a lot of money. Is he really making the requisite impact for what they traded for him and what they paid him in that contract for the next couple of years? And then their schedule kind of meandered. They earned a couple of wins. And then I would say their season peaked again, a high point with that Steelers win. Wow, Jordan Love. Wow. That defense harassing Aaron Rodgers. It's like, yeah, the Packers after the Steelers win. It's like, there they are. Now they look like a contender. And at that point, they'd won 3 in a row, Bengals, Cardinals, and Steelers. And then there was another valley. Panthers, Eagles. And I remember after the Eagles game, having earnest conversations about, man, Matt LaFleur's got to get his arms around this thing, or he probably won't maintain his job. In the NFL, you're always 2 or 3 awful wins away from being on the hot seat. Always. And since that low point against the Eagles, win at the Giants, blasted the Vikings, great win on Thanksgiving against the Vikings, and then, or the Lions. And then that Bears win on Sunday, and it feels like the Packers are peaking again. If you watch any power ranking segment, if you watch it, listen to any sports talk radio, it's like, well, the Packers back near the top, the herd hierarchy or whatever, like peaks and valleys. So Packers fans, I'm trying to, consider, and I'm trying to ask this question that's been posed throughout the season before. Do you think at this moment in time that Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur have done enough to warrant new contracts after this year? Now, the easy answer is, well, we'll have to, see what happens in the playoffs. Duh, of course. But it's December 9th. We're doing the show for December 9th. I think that Lions win, holy buckets. It's incredible what a big win over a division rival will do for the PR of a coach and the PR of an organization and a quarterback. I've said this multiple times throughout the season. After Jordan Love has a game like he had against the Lions or the Steelers, it's like, there's the good version of Jordan Love. And I've said this before. I think Jordan Love, by and large, has looked mostly like the same guy every week. Now, if he looks like mostly the same guy with a boneheaded interception in the fourth quarter, well, it's not exactly the same. But if you listen to people talk about Jordan Love, it's like, wow, 1 week he's this, 1 week he's that. I think he's been mostly pretty consistent throughout this season. And even in probably his worst game against the Eagles, if his wide receivers catch the ball, they probably escape with an ugly win. You know what I mean? So even in Jordan Love's worst game, that game was there to be won. It was right there. It was a 3-point game at home. I believe, they lost 10-7 in that game. So I think Jordan Love has been pretty consistent throughout this season. The O-line has settled in, and they've really cut out, if you want to talk about the work that a head coach is doing, they've really cut out a lot of the penalties, procedural penalties, holding penalties on offense. A lot of those things have been smoothed out. It's not to say they don't have any. Of course, you're going to have some of them in the course of every NFL game. But if you're checking head coach boxes right now, playing well against division opponents, avoiding boneheaded mistakes and penalties, the fourth down decisions that Matt LaFleur has made the last couple of weeks have worked. The field goal punt decisions, for the most part, have worked. Calling certain plays at certain times in crucial moments, seems like Matt LaFleur has nailed those. I think Matt LaFleur is on a bit of a heater right now. So when Zach asked me this morning, do you think Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur have done enough at this moment in the season to warrant contract extensions? Ultimately, their fates will be sealed as it pertains to their standing in the division and any playoff performances. But I think right now, man, you feel so much better and way different about the brain trust of the Packers than maybe you did when they came off that Eagles loss. And you're feeling like, man, if they don't get their S together, they could just miss the playoffs entirely. And at the time, they were 5-3-1. Since then, they've won 4 in a row. They're 9-3-1 at the top of the division and have a real good shot at the 1 seed. It's funny the different twists and turns a season can take. I'll take your calls on this. Anything Packers related, anything related. If you have a thought on Monday Night Football, sure, that's on the board as well. 608-321-1670. We already got loaded phone lines. I'll get to you right after this break in 3 minutes.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show going to warm up with some hot stove talk later this hour. Mike Clemens at 5:35, but I'm interested to hear your Packers takes at this hour. They've won 4 in a row, and Zach Heilprin cracked open a topic that had been left ignored for the last couple of weeks. Which is, hey, have Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst at this moment done enough to warrant contract extensions? I think they're close. Had you asked everybody 6 weeks ago, after the Panthers game or the Eagles game, probably get a very different answer. That's why I love daily sports talk radio. 608-321-1670. Right to your phone calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's that?
Hector in Alaska.
Hey, Hector, what's going on?
Heard you speaking about coaches that were, maybe getting a little stale or making the wrong calls. QBs that are, turning the ball over at an extreme rate. And it felt like you were just calling my name, Grant.
Lamar Jackson. Are you guys fed up with John Harbaugh? This is why, Packers fans are like, I don't think Matt LaFleur's the guy. And maybe he's not, but I'm always like, well, tune into, 15 or 20 other sports talk stations for other fan bases. Trust me, they're having the same conversations. And Harbaugh, unlike LaFleur's, won a Super Bowl.
Right. And 2 seasons ago, when the Ravens decided, or maybe it was 3 now, to bring in one Odell Beckham Jr., I was done with Harbaugh at that point. Because he's complete. He's like comfortable. He's too comfortable. So when people get too comfortable, they make dumb decisions. I think they should have got rid of him 2 years ago. It is what it is. We are lucky that the AFC North, which is normally very good, has had just horrible defense. So if it works out, then maybe we can still sneak in. But yeah, they should have. I say based off of the trends of this year, I would give your head coach a contract extension, because a big thing that I've seen around the league is a coach's inability to lose a player and bounce back, adjust, make changes so that you can continue to make a move and stay competitive. Teams just can't do that this season. The Packers have been able to do it. LaFleur has somehow blown my mind, Grant, and I would say that he is one of the better coaches this season based off of that. I mean, even in your division alone, the Vikings couldn't do anything once they lost their QB. Not that he was any good, I'm not saying the Lions are falling apart, but they've lost some key guys, and their offense just isn't the same without Laporta. They're a little more, gullible. I mean, I guess
one-dimensional,
just because it's like, yeah. So
one-dimensional.
I think yes on that, on his ability to continue to be competitive. And I mean, once you got Micah, I think your GM was safe.
I think so. I think the lesser of these two conversations, Hector, great call, appreciate it, is Brian Gutekunst. I think you'd have a hard time looking at Brian Gutekunst and say, you don't deserve to keep your job. You can look at Brian Gutekunst and say, hey, the first round picks maybe aren't perfect. This year's free agent additions aren't perfect. Sure, you can nitpick. I'm not telling you Brian Gutekunst is perfect, but I think on the level, he has done a pretty good job and has a team now that's capable of contending for a Super Bowl. If the good players, if Jordan Love and of course Matt LaFleur, the coach, if they do their job, I think they've been given an opportunity here with a legit Super Bowl window. Losing Tucker Kraft and being able to figure out some things offensively and bounce back from that and not recreate him, but like, okay, instead we're going to have to do this and we're going to have to figure out a way to do that. I think that's a huge feather in Matt LaFleur's cap. Absolutely. Dealing with an absence or an injury and being able to work through it as the season goes along. 100%. I think that's a great way to evaluate or to think about a coach, Hector. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Great. Good afternoon. It's Corey out of Marshall. How are you looking?
Excellent, Corey out of Marshall. How are you?
Not too bad. Just want to make sure you can hear me. So you had mentioned in relation to the Philadelphia Eagles being annoyed with them getting glazed on certain things. I'm going to add one other thing to that is that I get annoyed with Packers fans always glazing Cooper DeJean and always going to that well that the Packers should have drafted him. We have Cooper DeJean. He's called Evan Williams.
Yeah.
Better version of Cooper DeJean. But I know why everybody wants him in this state because he reminds you of you when you should have been put in the fourth quarter. Just didn't do it in high school and you could have been in the NFL. But that's my theory on that. I'm not saying you, Grant. I'm saying
interesting.
All the bozos on the streams that always are saying they should have drafted Cooper DeJean instead of the offensive lineman. It's like, yeah, I get it. That might have been a miss, but you got Edgerrin Cooper out of that draft, Javon Bullard, and Evan Williams.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy where they're at.
Bullard looks awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's ascending. He's going to be awesome. To your question about LaFleur and Gutekunst, I agree with your point about Gutekunst. I'm not, if anything, like there's really not a question in my mind that you have to re-sign him or extend him, what have you. The only thing he might have is trying to fix two positions or trying to fix one position with two moves at offensive line by putting Elton Jenkins at center, and that kind of turned into a disaster. But I don't know if the bony finger has to play on Luke Buckus if he had convinced them that yes, I can make this guy as a guard into a center, and then well, we know what happened there. LaFleur, you already made this point, and the fellow from Alaska made my point as well about he's adjusted mid-season after that disaster, the Carolina game when he lost Kraft, and I think Jenkins went down in that same game. If I might be wrong on that, but
somewhere near there.
Yeah,
I think it might have been the Eagles game, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. Right. So having that big of a body blow, because let's be honest, the offense they talked about at the beginning of the year was essentially designed around Tucker Kraft being a whirling dervish, ball and eyes, whatever you want to call it. He's a tough SOP. You can see the difference between him and Luke Musgrave, who's a wilting flower out there. Falls down every time he gets the ball. Maybe he's going to run in the form to it. We'll see. But I've really been impressed with LaFleur. Actually, like, his tactical decisions have gotten better, and that was my complaint at the beginning of the year. I said this to you and to Billy Mikes. His emotions on the sideline, he's gotten that under control. He's less jumping around and looking like a chick out there. And it seems like he's more of a confident coach that's kind of rounding into his own. And so he's actually really come on, kind of like Private Pile in Full Metal Jacket. He's born again hard. That's what I like to see. So, if he can take the next step now, they've gone to 2 NFC championship games. If you could get him to a Super Bowl, that's where I'm like, okay, he's fully like beyond, right? He's fully like a great coach.
And we won't be able to, and Corey, I gotta let you go because we got a load of phone lines. I appreciate it. We won't be able to judge that now. It's funny you mentioned the emotion on the sideline because I thought he was pretty fired up a couple of times in that game on Sunday about the missed holding or what they, perceived to be a missed holding. I don't know the rules. It looked like Micah Parsons had an arm around his neck. Like Matt LaFleur was pretty engaged on that. And then he lit up Keyshawn Nixon really good.
LaFleur got in his ass.
Correct, Bill. He did. So it's funny when Matt LaFleur gets emotional in losses, it's childish. It's when he doesn't wins, it's almost like we don't even recognize it. And Corey, I'm not picking at you, but it's just a part of the way that we talk about fans and fandom. Yeah, for the Jordan Morgan pick last year and all the complaints about that, going Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams. Bullard is so important to the speed of their defense, like rushing to take down ball carriers, rushing to hit a running back after only a 1 or 2, that second level tackling. even though he doesn't, he doesn't force a bunch of fumbles, interceptions, he'll give you a highlight hit. But Javon Bullard is so important to that part of their defense. All right, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tom from Oak Creek. How are you?
I'm excellent, Tom. How about you?
I'm doing well. So in regards to this LaFleur, Gutekunst, to me, I don't think they're a package deal. I think it seems like everybody's kind of agreeing with that. I think Gutekunst for sure has earned an extension. As everyone's been talking about, he's really hit in the draft, especially, middle rounds more than he's missed. To me, I think you also look at the foresight for the Christian Watson contract that they just signed.
Yeah.
The fact that he had the foresight to sign that before he came back, we've got him locked up for next year. I mean, if Christian Watson could walk at the end of this year, you could just imagine the contract that he would be getting. And so they've got him on an incredibly inexpensive deal relatively. So I think Gutekunst for sure, I think they should bring back. And then LaFleur, still kind of trending in the right direction, to be determined. But to me, I think they're separate, and Gutekunst definitely has earned an extension.
So, and I don't know about that part, Tom. I appreciate it. I guess maybe that's something that we need to discuss too. Would Ed Policy consider retaining one and not the other? Maybe that's a question for Mike Clemens or, Pete Doherty or Bill Huber or anybody that we have, not just on this show, but on Bill's show too. I don't know what their school of thought is there. Are they a package deal or maybe would they split them? I don't think right now they have reason to, but it's just something to consider when we have these discussions, depending how the end of the year goes. All right, one more call, then we got to go to break. I'm sorry. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
I think I'm taking crazy pills, Grant.
Are you Vagabond John?
Everybody's talking about how it's just incredible, man. They endured a loss and they got over it. Man, we lost Tucker Kraft at the exact same moment we got Christian Watson. And I would argue going into the next year, I don't want to take anything away from Tucker Kraft. That dude is a badass tight end. But in this LaFleur, Jordan Love offense, a deep threat that's reliable that scores 5 touchdowns the last 5 games, Christian Watson's probably in the top 3 most important players on offense. Tucker Kraft might be a 4th or 5th guy, right? Every team's going to lose somebody like that. So I don't want any excuses going into playoffs if we lose Tucker Kraft. This has been and is always about playing in the playoffs. You're going to have 5 coaches that are between the ages of 36 and LaFleur's 46. They're all his buddies from back in the Shanahan days, right? If he gets out-coached, he has more talent than anybody else in the NFC. I think that's clear. I think that's Goody, right? I think Micah Parsons puts everybody over the edge.
Okay.
It's funny because I went to the dentist, so half my mouth is numb, and this is a crazy rant. But it just comes down to the playoffs, right? We can talk about this, and Matt and Cross Plains, not Matt and Cross Plains, the other guy. He can talk about, absolutely, Matt LaFleur's earned his stripes. If we get to that playoff game and we lose a stinker in the first round, this front offense is going to have a tough decision to make on LaFleur because this team is stacked with talent on defense and with Christian Watson coming back on offense. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And great rant, Vagabond John. Way to close the segment. So I don't disagree with anything that you just said. For today's show, December 9th, I almost view these last 2 games not as playoff games because they're regular season games, but in Detroit on Thanksgiving and at home for first place in the NFC North against the Bears, who had won a bunch of games in a row, those aren't playoff games. They're the next closest thing. And I thought Matt LaFleur had 2 of his better games in recent memory in those spots. So again, checking boxes now, of course, goes without saying, reevaluate, and draw different conclusions about playoff games. But I think just based on what we've seen over the last month, you have to be really happy with the job that Matt LaFleur is doing. We got a couple callers on hold. I promise I'll get you right on the other side, and I'll give you a thought as well. You talk about some of the decisions that Brian Gutekunst has made in the draft. I think some of the day 3 guys that were selected in this last April draft are going to be really interesting characters moving into this offseason. I'll tell you why and kind of discuss I don't know if it's a forgotten storyline, but a storyline with Goody that we haven't really dug into that much. So we'll get to that on the other side and more of your phone calls as well.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
We are in the time of year where conversations and narratives shift on an almost week-to-week basis. We had Matt LaFleur, the Packers head coach, lose on a Monday night game to the Eagles, I believe. And after the game, his future in Green Bay became a major topic of conversation that week. Last week, we had the fans in Pittsburgh chanting to fire Mike Tomlin. That became a talking point all week long, his future. So while people were wondering about Matt LaFleur and while people were questioning Mike Tomlin, we now have the Packers in first place in the NFC North as, I believe, the number 2 seed. And we have the Pittsburgh Steelers in first place in the AFC North coming off a week in which they beat Baltimore. It's just amazing how quickly these conversations and narratives change. I'm going to tell you another thing. It's Tuesday, December 9th. There's somebody we're not even talking about right now whose team is going to struggle down the stretch, that in the last podcast of this year, we're going to be saying, what do you make of what's going on in this place with that coach?
Adam Schefter, with his podcast with Ty Schmidt, who's on the McAfee show. Just some sound that hints at what we're talking about. Like, yeah, good couple of games, and all of a sudden Matt LaFleur's feeling pretty good. And give it 2 weeks, there'll be some coach we're not even talking about right now who everyone will want fired. I don't know that I totally get the Tomlin because two very different coaches, two very different stages. I know the Steelers beat the Ravens. I still don't think anyone's taking them seriously. A little bit of a difference there. But whatever, it fits. Narratively speaking, it fits. Right back to your phone calls. Get to a couple of you here. And then the final segment of the hour, Hot Stove. I want to talk about some Brewers rumors real quick. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hi, it's Todd in Green Bay.
What's going on, Tom? Todd or Tom?
Todd. Yeah, Grant, thanks for taking my call. You know, I don't want to see Matt LaFleur fail, but I have to admit there's two situations. You know, you went through your checklist. He had a better game this week. He threw in some crossing patterns. It made the offense look easier and better. That's awesome. That is incredible. But Matt LaFleur, it's on tape. I go to the games. I have season tickets. I tape them. I watch it after the game. He gets on inside the other across the 50-yard line. It's really important. We got a chance to score, either get a field goal or a touchdown, and he goes into 5-man protection, and we get a sack. It happened with Rodgers. It happened with Love this week. And then, of course, Love is behind the 8 ball, and that's when he had his interception. And then if you're Packer-Bear game, you know the Bears can run. They went 17 plays. You know, they held the ball against Philly. Mm-hmm. So what do? We get the ball in the first half, and they came out. I watched it on TV. I've seen it. It's not a good play call on first down where the passing, there was no one open. I'm saying all week, you know you might get the ball in the second, and it's an important drive. I know, you know, I'm 61 years old. I know you can't score on every drive, okay? Yeah, but having said that, it's very important to set the tone for the second half. It's a very important drive, okay? So you should have a play where you get a guy in the open, where you get a 5, 6, 7 yard positive gain, okay? So that's important, and that's where I say LaFleur he does that constantly, and then the Bears end up having the ball the whole second half. So there's little things like that LaFleur doesn't see on film. He doesn't correct himself. I'd like to see him succeed, but he continues to do that, and people wash over that, and those are big things, okay? And you could argue that LaFleur sets up a lot of Love's interceptions are because Matt LaFleur had bad sequence of play calling and stuff like that. So my point is, Love is a superstar. He's carrying LaFleur. I would like to see LaFleur succeed, but you got to be honest that LaFleur isn't perfect yet on his offensive scheme or play calling, even though he really improved with the crossing routes. And look at the Bears, Ben Johnson. He's got 18 rolling out, and they're doing crossing routes like he did in Detroit. A 13-year-old could have scouted the NFC North and see how our division opponents use crossing routes. And it took LaFleur to gain game 13 to start using crossing routes. And he didn't use Tucker Kraft until like week 4 or 5. So that's what my problem with LaFleur.
No, there's a lot of good stuff there, Todd. You strike me as someone who, and I'm glad you said that, you think Jordan Love's a superstar. I think he's very good. I think he's the identity of this offense because in large part this year he's had to be when they've been in the wide receiver wilderness a little bit and their protection has been great. It's not that I don't believe you, Todd. It's that it seems to me, and I listen to other markets and other fan bases, a recurring theme that I hear when a team loses and the offense doesn't perform is, well, they didn't run any slants. Where are the slants? Where are the crossing patterns? Where are the middle of the field? And I'm not telling you that you're wrong. It's just when I hear that from every fan base as a little bit of a response to a loss, I don't know that it's true. I guess I would need to see the play-by-play. The 3-and-out to start the second half, let's focus on that. I agree, because the Packers' 2 3-and-outs in the second half kind of felt similar. It was very boom or bust, where they came out and, all right, 3 plays, dud, punt, and then the other drives were great. Where when the Bears came out every time in the second half, they strapped in and they were sequencing plays, and, you know, Jordan Love took a deep poke to Romeo Doubs on one of those third downs. He took a deep poke to Bo Melton. He underthrew him, Bo Melton, with a smart OPI. I also don't know what you mean by Jordan Love's interceptions are caused by Matt LaFleur's scheme. So Todd, I hope we talk again. You just gave me a ton there. I'll address a little bit of it, but I want to get the rest of the callers in here before we get to baseball in the last segment. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's Matt the Darkness, his alter ego.
Yeah, what a call that was this morning. Yeah, it was wildly entertaining and informative as always.
Okay, Goody, yes. Come on, people. 7 years. Do we have to go over clock management? And when 130 a game is an F. But again, I'm going to keep saying this generation, that Corey Marshall. Yeah, let's give him a chance. The last 4 games, he's done good. 130 a game's been an F for 7 years. Clock management's been an F. 4 games this year, yeah. Like the last caller mentioned, he is correct, though. Every second half, I don't know what it is, this Packer team, they melt down and they hang on for dear life. And it's nonstop. Special teams, horrible.
Do you think they were hanging on for dear life against Detroit? Detroit's just really good. Detroit kept scoring, so the Packers kept scoring.
That's okay. That's one game.
Okay.
You got Carolina, you got Cleveland, you got Dallas, you've got the Bears. Mm-hmm. You had Philadelphia, you had Washington. You go on and on and on. No, he doesn't. You don't bring this guy back. He's already proven it. He got 7 years of body work versus 4 weeks. But this generation again, 4 weeks, and everybody wants to go, yes, let's give him another chance.
Wow.
Hey, Cub fans, we got to put up in this crap in Chicago with our guy. He had a good trade. He was going to be out the door. Next thing you know, Ricketts signs him to a contract 1 week before the trade deadline, and then the rest was history.
So, Dave, you're not wrong. I don't get the Ricketts Jed Hoyer corollary, but that's fine for now. We'll circle back to that at a different time if you want. If you just want to say Matt LaFleur's been here 7 years, if he can't do it this year, it's not happening. Cut bait. Technically, that's all the ammo that you need because NFL precedent would back you up. So if you're just a believer, it's like if it hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen. I can't argue with you. It doesn't exactly make for a compelling back and forth on the radio, but that's why I'm conceding that to you. If you think that 6 or 7 years is enough, you've had opportunities to prove it hasn't happened. Sure, you could take that stance. I'm not really going to have a response other than, yeah, the precedent would back you up. It's just not very engaging. 2 more callers here, and then I want to get to a baseball segment at the end. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Jeff. Quickly, I think LaFleur has tried to force the run game a little too much with
Agreed.
the lack of quality on the offensive line. I would really love if Morgan had been worth that first-round pick. Because he might be able to help them on the offensive line, but he clearly can't at this point. So that was lacking. But now that he seems to have opened the offense up a little bit, I think that's an improvement, and that's just he's faced reality. Had they been able to run for 30 more yards in different spots in the second half, not even score more, just take more time.
Yeah.
Could have easily won by 10 or more points against the Bears. Not controlling that clock because you cannot run the ball like you did last year. He's got to understand that.
Well, and
I
think. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, one more thing.
Go ahead.
Well,
you follow up.
Okay, Jeff, that's an awesome call. And the running game is a great point. I think Matt LaFleur struggled with that early in the year. He wants to be a running team. He wants to be a run-first team the same way that Shanahan does or some of his contemporaries do, McDaniel. Less Shanahan, although that's a pretty big part of what they do out there, or less McVay, but Shanahan certainly. That's what he wants to do. And I think they tried hook or by crook so many times this year to get it going, and I think he's just come to terms with, okay, we're going to situationally use the run game and Josh Jacobs, which I think is how he's best used. But I just don't know that it's ever going to be a strength of this team. Jordan Morgan, you're right. I don't think he's a total bust in that he'll never contribute on the O-line. He probably profiles better at tackle. I just have a difficult time today saying, well, they'll just let Rasheed Walker go and then Jordan Morgan's your left tackle and it's great. At this moment, that's a little bit of a reach for me. Like if you can't stay on the field at right guard and you whiff all the time, like maybe he's so out of position at right guard and he'll be so natural left tackle, maybe. I still feel better about the O-line knowing that he's a potential, player on it moving forward, a blue chip prospect, but I would bet against him being a long-term starter at any position right now. That could clearly change. One more call here, and then I want to talk baseball. Wisco Sports Show. Who's that?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening.
Good evening, Grant. Boy, when you're talking about switching from week to week, how you feel about your football team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true.
Fan is short for fanatic.
True. It really is. Because a week ago, we would have probably thrown J.J. McCarthy in the trash, and Kevin O'Connell sucks. And this week, we're not that bad. We're not. We got to understand we beat the Washington Redskins. We get that.
Yeah.
but we didn't look that bad doing it. Packer fans got to understand that Minnesota beat Chicago once, almost beat them again, and beat Detroit once. So we're not. I'm not saying that the Packers are a far more talented team. They were the better roster on the field. But if you think Caleb Williams is not something to be contended with going forward, he is going to be something to be contended with.
Well, I think especially with that coach. If he was with a bozo coach, I wouldn't, think that way. But I'm with you. He just has too many really good traits to be a complete and total wash and bust. Yeah.
Well, another thing too you got to remember too about him is he had 1 year of garbage time. This is basically his first year with a good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's going to be something to be contended with. That whole team, whether we like it or not. Minnesota's got to deal with him too.
Yeah.
But I got to pray for him to lose, man. I got to pray for him to lose. If the Bears keep losing, the Vikings keeps winning, we're in the hunt.
Yeah, well, this is what I appreciate it, Eric. I'm late for a break. This is what Zach told me, or Ebo, that you are not giving up on your Vikings yet. So we'll have to talk about that a little bit more at a later date, maybe later this week. We just had a ton of Matt LaFleur phone calls, so I got everyone in. So don't call Ebo crying tomorrow that you couldn't get on the show. I just took a bunch of them in a row. I want to give you another Brewers trade rumor. We'll spend the last 5 or 6 minutes of the hour discussing that, and then we can open it back up after 5 o'clock. I have a Brian Gutekunst thing that we can discuss, and I'll continue to welcome your Matt LaFleur commentary as well as it relates to his future with the Packers moving forward after this contract, or not if they decide to go a different way. And remember, of course, Mike Clemens will be here at 5:35. Final segment, and we'll warm up with some hot stove talk next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills and Sports Zone Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. This Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, Mike Clemens in about 45 minutes. I want to talk about Brian Gutekunst, that half of the Packers brain trust after 5 o'clock. Continue to take your Matt LaFleur phone calls as well. It's been cold this week. Why don't we warm up a little bit with some hot stove talk? I saw a headline this morning from Joel Sherman, the New York Post, that it's not just Freddie Peralta that's been gathering interest around baseball. It's Trevor McGill as well. And I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to read this reporting. And then I clicked it and popped it open, and I must subscribe to the New York Post Plus, which great for journalism, and you should support it. But I spent $8 on a tube of toothpaste this morning. I ain't sorry. So I went to Baseball Trade Rumors, or MLB Trade Rumors, and this is what I found. Though much of the trade chatter surrounding, I love the word chatter, surrounding the Brewers will focus on ace Freddie Peralta, who's a free agent following the season. Joel Sherman of the New York Post reports that Trevor McGill is drawing interest from an even wider number of clubs. That includes the Yankees and the Mets. Now, you got to consider the Yankees just lost Devin Williams to the Mets, and the Mets just lost Edwin Diaz to the Dodgers. McGill, 32, popped up as a speculative trade candidate last month after Brandon Woodruff accepted his one-year, $22 million qualifying offer. That decision pushed the Brewers' payroll up to its currently projected $135.5, which would stand as the highest opening day total in history. There's no indication that Milwaukee needs to shed salary now. They wouldn't have made the qualifying offer to Woodruff had they been wholly unwilling to risk him accepting. That framing is funny to me. It's like, oh, Brandon Woodruff wants to stay, huh? Oh, crap. Okay, I guess we'll have to pay him. But the budget is obviously tightened since he decided to forgo the open market. In the aftermath of that trade, both president of baseball operations and owner publicly indicated that Woodruff accepting his qualifying offer and any decision on whether to trade Peralta were separate issues. I agree, and we've discussed this. Like, I don't think the Brewers will trade Freddie Peralta because of money. They might trade him because they feel like they can get an awesome return, but that will be independent of the $8 million that they owe him. I guess I feel the same way about Trevor McGill. If you look at Spotrac, they project him, he's an arbitration one player, to make about $6. And in a vacuum, the Brewers trading a reliever who has a lot of value for a nice return is something that they would do. In a vacuum, trading a starter with a trading a starter with a lot of value with only 1 year remaining on their contract is something that they would do. They did it with Corbin Burns. They've done it with others. In a vacuum, a Freddie Peralta trade and/or a McGill trade would make sense. The financial framing, when you consider the context of Woodruff accepting his qualifying offer, it doesn't really make sense to me. If Freddie was making $25 million, then I feel like a trade is likely. He's making $8 million, and he's really important to that team. McGill making $6.5 million, like, you tell me, is it that big of a difference spending $135 on a team versus $127? Again, if McGill was making $20 million, then a trade would seem a lot more likely. I just don't know. Like, we're talking about relative pittance here, to use Bill's word from earlier. Like, you're trading $6 million, you're losing $8 million, which again is fine if you get a return that you like. I think the Brewers are content to sit back and just field offers from these high-level teams and just wait for something to blow them away. And if not, I imagine they'd be fine keeping them both. I'm also just always fine trading away a reliever when their value is probably highest. And I feel like McGill's probably is, especially with the arm issues, the elbow issues towards the end of the year. If you have thoughts on this, we can pick it up on the other side. Otherwise, I want to get back into the Packers. But first, a 2-minute update from Zach Heilprin. No commercials, just the latest in Wisconsin sports.
Wisconsin Sports Zone Update. It's an off day for the Packers up in Green Bay. They'll get back on the field tomorrow to start prepping for a trip to face Denver on Sunday. Broncos 11-2 have won 10 straight games. Packers, meanwhile, have won 4 straight with a couple of tough losses to Carolina and Philadelphia. It hasn't been perfect. Matt LaFleur says they've continued to grow as a team.
You just got to continue to fight and try to find ways to be better. And sometimes you got to overcome some obstacles, injuries, and whatnot. And there's that's a learning curve in terms of how do we fill that spot that this player, that void that player left there. And that's the challenge of everything in the league. It's not like we're unique from everybody else. We're all dealing with this stuff.
Going to be Packers and Broncos on Sunday in Denver. Pick out their study for 325. Turning to Wisconsin, they had another one of their players clear the transfer portal, running back Cade Iaconelli announced his decision this morning. Finished his career with 571 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Had just 38 carries this past season. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. The transfer portal doesn't officially open until January 2nd.
Rural Mutual Insurance is the number one farm insurer. They also offer competitive home, auto, business, and life insurance. They make it convenient to bundle your insurance while saving you time and money. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn more.
The Badgers will face off against number 23 Nebraska tomorrow night out at Lincoln. They will do so with the reigning Big Ten Player of the Week in John Blackwell. He posted his third game with at least 30 points on Saturday against Marquette. Ranks third in the Big Ten in terms of scoring at 21 points per game. And the Bucs are still off. They'll face Boston on Thursday at Fiserv Forum. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, Print.
And the Toyota-thon thing is real. I'll admit it. I hate saying this. The Toyota-thon thing is real. It scares the hell out of me, and I really don't know what to do about it.
What is the Toyota-thon?
When Toyota-thon starts their deals, Jordan Love starts playing
He
really
just
good
plays
football.
incredible.
His numbers are insane. I'll pull it up. I have it. It's terrible.
I'm the proud owner of not one but two murdered out minivans, Toyota Siennas, and they're fantastic vehicles. You got to see it. I mean,
Sienna.
No free ads.
It's a real
super
thing.
Reliable,
You got a
dude.
pair of vans?
I got two minis, and they're great. Got like 130,000 miles on one. She runs like a beaut.
Jordan Love during Toyota-thon, this was before last week, so he had a pretty good game because he went 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Jordan Love during Toyota-thon, 4,005 yards, 33 touchdowns, 1 interception. Anytime Toyota-thon happens.
The Packers need to pay Toyota to extend the
Yes. But the thing is real. I don't know what to say. It's driving me nuts because I've ignored it for a very long time and been like, no way is this actually real. It's the truth.
We found a way to win a lot of these tight games. A year ago, we didn't. A lot of times we were digging ourselves into holes and we had to come back and we just couldn't quite pull it off. And this year, there's been a lot less of that.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
It's a little bit from Big Cat on is it Wake Up Barstool? I'm sorry, I believe it's Wake Up Barstool. It might be Get Up Barstool, but that's on FS1 in the mornings. And I cut that just to bring up Toyota-thon and the thing that Jordan Love is known for this time of year. And to build off our Matt LaFleur conversation from hour number 1, I was just thinking earlier today, I wonder if Matt LaFleur ever behind closed doors is like, why don't I get credit for being the Toyota-thon coach? You know what I mean? Doesn't Matt LaFleur in some way get credit for that? Or do we just fully believe that Jordan Love wakes up when the clock hits Toyota-thon, whenever that is, and he's just like, all right, time to play good now? Like, isn't that a reflection of the offensive coaching and the play calling and the execution? He's got to be part of it, right? The Packers have won 4 in a row, and I think a lot of people are feeling much better about Matt LaFleur as the head coach. Wouldn't you know? Circling back and getting to some of these texts from the first hour, 608-321-1670. Bobby in Menominee says, Gutekunst should be gone. I think he's pretty replaceable. I think of the two, Gutekunst has had probably the better run of success here the last couple of years. And I don't think Matt LaFleur's been bad. But I don't know how you could look at this Packers roster and think, yeah, that roster's not good enough. Corner isn't perfect. But guys, I keep telling you, Keyshawn Nixon's pretty good. I was listening to Trevor Sikkema and Dalton Wasserman. I cut some audio. Maybe we'll get to it here before Mike Clemens at 5:30. They're talking about how Keyshawn Nixon's awesome and made one of the headiest plays at the end of that game. These are the Pro Football Focus guys. Made one of the headiest plays at the end of that game that any corner has made all year. So you nitpick the weakest position on the field for the Packers, the one that's generally perceived to be the weakest position, corner, and you have Keyshawn Nixon leading the way, a guy who's made some great plays in coverage and hits. So, Bobby, I guess I don't know where you're coming from. Where it's like, I don't know, Goody's replaceable. I don't know. He's drafted pretty well. Hasn't done all his first-round picks. But last year, man, going Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, and Javon Bullard in rounds 2, 3, 4. I think it was 2, 3, 4. Maybe it was 2 through 3. They might have had an extra pick somewhere in there. That's pretty darn good, even with Jordan Morgan at the top of the draft being a relative unknown at this point. Well, we know that he can't play right guard. He's not an unknown, I guess, a relative unknown. Rock and Rick says, Cooper is a cornerback. Evan is a safety. I wanted him bad. Yeah, kind of a woke progressive take from Corey and Marshall in hour number 1, saying people only wanted Cooper DeJean because, he looks like us. Very, very progressive from Corey. Good for him. I'm kidding, of course. Jay Krebs says, Johnny couldn't be wronger on Kraft. He's the Packers' second best player behind Love. Yeah. So Vagabond John called in last hour. Part of the reason that Matt LaFleur is getting some credit from callers in the first hour was that he's been able to adjust and make up for the loss of Tucker Kraft. They did get Christian Watson back. The thing is they're two very different players. Although, how about the yards after the catch from Watson on Sunday? If they get more of that, attacking the middle of the field, that'll go a long way in helping for the lack of Kraft. I also think, and Mike Clemens has talked about this, that part of Tucker Kraft's impact on this team is off the field, as almost a coach on the field. Clemens has shared getting guys aligned, calling out alignments and calling out signals and stuff, right? His role in that part of the game, not just being yards after the catch monster, the likes of which they don't really have elsewhere on the roster, other than maybe a little Jaden Reed. And wouldn't you know it, the Packers were eager to get him involved on Sunday, basically in the first drive. And Vagabond John now on the live stream says Watson is far more important to LaFleur's offense. I don't know. Maybe we could debate this. I think they're just such different players who offer very different things. I think he's probably more important to Jordan Love, who, if he goes too many plays without going deep, his hand starts shaking, and Watson gives him that outlet. Bobby Menominee says, the O-line management is my biggest gripe against Gutekunst. I mean, what? Moving Elton Jenkins to center? I thought it was a fairly reasonable idea. You can't say that he's underinvested in there. He's invested the picks in Belton, who looks like he might be a pretty good right tackle. They had extra bodies, so when Elton Jenkins went down, they could move Sean Ryan over to center. Banks has settled in. He's not awesome, but I don't think they signed him to be awesome. They signed him to be solid enough, and I think for the most part, especially recently, he's been that. You don't have to love this current O-line, but you can't say that Brian Gutekunst has neglected the position or underserved it. Stephen Lacrosse, one more text says, I think Goody and LaFleur have done enough. Be real. Who are you going to get? I don't know. I don't want to play that game right now. The coach I'm concerned about keeping is Hafley, maybe a Hafley-LaFleur swap. I don't think that would play. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's the nature of hiring good coordinators, as they get hired away. So if you're concerned about it, it's a good problem to have. Try to win this year while you have him. I saw a tweet that I bookmarked from Robert Mays on Jeff Hafley, by the way. Robert Mays is with The Athletic. Tweeted, the Packers defense remind me of Spag's best defenses in recent years. Back seven guys fly around as tacklers. Pressure plan tests you. They don't give up explosive, good game plan specific details. It's a group that's well built for playoff football. Talking about game specific details, that final play, I'll give you this cut. It's Trevor Sikkema and Dalton Wasserman talking about that final play by Nixon and how Hafley had his guys ready to go. And for everyone who hates on the Packers corners and hates on Nixon, they seem to like him a lot. These are the PFF guys.
As good a play as any all year that I've seen a corner make. For that play alone, I would have made him most outstanding. And then, like you said, he had a great game overall. But the awareness, and again, that's the part where I'm so curious about this chess match. Because Jeff Hafley, I don't think I've said once this year that anybody got the best of Ben Johnson. Jeff Hafley got the best of him in this game, and that one play right there exemplifies the whole thing. There's a lot of examples, and I could spend all day on it, but Keyshawn Nixon being prepared for that moment, just an unreal play, maybe the best play I've seen from any corner all season.
No! And a lot of people would tell you Keyshawn Nixon stinks. As I said a million times yesterday, I'm not telling you he's Darrelle Revis. I think he's pretty darn good. And he hits. He tackles. I'd rather have that than some pretty boy cover corner who won't stick his nose in there because they're all going to give up catches. That's how the position works. You're going up against Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and yeah, good luck, man. Like, yeah, you're going to give up some catches. You're going to get beat here and there. Duh. This offseason, as we talk about the future or possible futures for both Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, this offseason will be an interesting one for Gutekunst or whoever is the GM if Ed Policy decides to go in a different direction. I would be floored. Even if the Packers, if the end of the season crashes and burns, I would still be floored. I think Goody will be here, but this offseason will be a particularly interesting one. Not to skip ahead, but since we're talking about it, I think they've reached an inflection point in the wide receiver room to the point where some choices will need to be made. Who to extend, who to keep. Maybe one of them gets traded. Romeo Dobbs has looked really just out of it the last couple of weeks. I'm not claiming that he's out of it and disinterested, although he did have a touchdown against the Lions, so it's not like he's been completely missing. He was basically completely missing against the Bears, but I could see him in Denver having 6 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. That's kind of how this thing goes. But he has been the one that's certainly seen his workload cut the most since Christian Watson's return. He had kind of been their de facto wide receiver one. It's going to be really interesting to see how Brian Gutekunst or whoever, views that room moving forward. I wouldn't be shocked if they decide we might need to draft somebody else. We might need to add. I would be floored if it's in the first or second round, but day 3, you mix some guys in, maybe with special teams in mind. I saw Andy Herman, and I agree with this. I'll read you the tweet here, doing his trust tree of current Packers wide receivers and who he trusts most, the order in which he would want them out on the field. At least I think it was for me. And if I can't find it, then maybe it was somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe I bookmarked it. But I think right now, Watson, Reed, here it is. This is his grades by play from the other day. So Sunday against the Bears. He had Reed, Watson, Wicks, Golden, Melton, Savion Williams, Romeo Dobbs, Malik Heath. Reed was obviously in a much smaller sample. He didn't play as much. I think Watson's going to be here. Golden and Williams, obviously. Reed, yes. I think the question is, what do you do with Wicks? What do you do with Dobbs? Wicks might fit a little bit better in their offense. Is he a guy that you're willing to extend? I don't know. Malik Heath isn't here anymore. He was picked up by the Falcons, I believe. He was the roster move to make space for Jaden Reed, I believe, this last week. Maybe it was somebody else, but not here anymore anyways. So he grades out as the last guy anyways, and he had just been suspended. The D-line, I think, will be the most interesting and maybe most consequential position of this offseason. They can't have this current version of Rashawn Gary on the roster making $28 million next year. It just, not with the money that's going to be allocated to Love and the money that'll be allocated now to Zach Tom, who got extended, and to Micah Parsons. And they're probably going to have to invest some money. I would imagine maybe they'll try to pay guys early. They have some young defensive players, and I don't know when they'd even be up. If you want to start talking and allocating money for Evan Williams or Javon Bullard or Edgerrin Cooper, obviously, as well. Christian Watson, if that's an extension. It's just, sorry, man. Rashawn Gary, you kind of look washed. You look over the hill right now. You look slow. He hasn't been impactful. Enigbari's made more plays. They can't have this version of Rashawn Gary on the roster making $28 million. So a trade, I don't think they'll have the option to cut him. But they're going to have to do something there. Enigbari's at the end of his deal. I don't think that they will pay him, not because he doesn't deserve it. I think he'll be some, version of what happened with Zadarius Smith in Baltimore, where it's like, yeah, small role. We really like you. Go somewhere else and get paid, because we have other guys who we're prioritizing. And I think maybe I saw Ken Ingalls make that point on Twitter earlier today or yesterday. So no Rashawn Gary next year at this rate would be my guess. No Enigbare. Now those day 3 picks in this previous draft start to look a little bit more interesting and crucial. Can you get anything from Barron Sorrell, Warren Brinson, Colin Oliver, and I suppose Lucas Van Ness as well? That's 2 drafts ago now, and he's hurt. So let's see if he comes back and has a banging final 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Like that would go a long way into not reshaping this defensive front around Micah Parsons, but it would certainly be evolved. I've just been so underwhelmed by the lack of anything from Rashawn Gary. Anything at all. Run support, disruptive plays against the quarterback, just anything at all. So they're going to have to evolve this defensive front. Those day 3 picks from this last draft will be important. And Lucas Van Ness, who's one of the more maligned Brian Gutekunst draft picks. This year, I think we might be singing some praises if he was healthy. I don't think he'd be a superstar, but I think he'd be a contributing rotational piece, which with Micah Parsons and Enigbari and Rashawn Gary is basically all they need. I mean, if he wants to turn into prime Lawrence Taylor, I'd take it, but it's, we're trying to be realistic about what to expect from that guy in year 3 now. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Louie in Eau Claire.
Hey, what's going on, Louie?
Hey, Grant. I consider myself kind of a tough but fair grader of both LaFleur and Love. They each seem to play or coach really well, and then make like one throw or one decision per game that kind of makes you go, huh, what was that? But after watching last night's debacle between the Chargers and Eagles, and the night before the Chiefs and Texans, and I think like you said on Bill's show, none of these are playing a real buttoned-up style of football, and it makes me appreciate those guys more. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are out there looking kind of listless.
Yeah, he's making bad 4th down decisions. Chiefs people are like, what's Andy Reid's deal? Like, no, Louis, no fan base, it really seems, is ever that thrilled with their coaches and GM. Like, everyone's got a complaint about something. It's not just us.
Right, and that's why I think I have more appreciation than ever for LaFleur and Love after watching these games. Do they have a wart or two? Sure. Does Jordan Love make a throw per game that, like, wow, what that was kind of out of nowhere, or Matt LaFleur an odd challenge or an odd game strategy deal? But overall, they're really, really good. And to be honest, I don't, besides the Rams, if they're cooking with Nakua and Adams and Stafford, I don't fear Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. I think if you put pressure on him, he'll fold. All the other teams, the Eagles look not very good at all. I guess the Patriots look kind of buttoned up, but they're unproven.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Packers are right there for the. I think it's right there for the taking. Do you think that kind of the overall? Maybe I'm just have kind of a poor memory, but it seems like this is kind of the penalties and mistakes all across the league are kind of at an all-time high. You think that's just kind of an anomaly, or do you think with the lack of practice time and the training in the spring that this is just kind of how it's going to be, or do you think this is just kind of a little blip in the radar for overall quality of play? Because it seems like it's kind of low to me.
I think it depends on the game, honestly. And this is something I was thinking about last night, Louis. I appreciate the call on Monday Night Football. There was a holding penalty, it felt like, on every other play. And the Eagles had, a couple of these big plays brought back. And then I watched the replay. I'm like, And then I considered the Packer game that we watched, where it felt like Micah Parsons or somebody was getting held on every play and nothing was called. I think it's a game-by-game, refereeing crew by refereeing crew, basis. Every game kind of takes its own shape. And once one holding is called, then you kind of got a standard to uphold. So that might take, you might end up with more flags one way or another. I don't know that the quality of play has been that low for the Packers recently. I think they've been more buttoned up. Banks had that hands to the face penalty. There's a holder on the long snapper. Bo Melton committed an OPI just to save an interception, which is such a heady penalty, by the way. Did they have I was trying to remember if they had any else. Those are the only penalties I can remember. Folks, you're going to have 2, 3, 4 penalties a game just because that's how football works. Even when you play a buttoned up game, they just kind of naturally occur sometimes. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, right? An O-line punches a shoulder, the hand slips, goes into the face mask. It's not an undisciplined play. That rep just went sideways. And a quarterback underthrows a deep ball. The corner doesn't turn because why would he? He's covering the deep ball. So it's, one of those flag. Like, they just kind of sometimes happen. I think the Packers' quality of play has been pretty high recently. And that's why we're talking about Matt LaFleur and maybe how his role or his place at the team, maybe hasn't been solidified, but you feel a lot better about him staying on as head coach, even though Ed Policy said, that inflection point is going to happen after this season. We'll talk about all this and more with Mike Clemens. He'll bring some audio and some reaction to what he's seen up in Green Bay this week. He'll join us at 5:35. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Any loose ends we'll tie it up before we get to Mike.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Love over the middle of the field is unbelievably confident right now. Everything over the middle, in between the numbers in this game, Jordan Love was excellent. He was doing that signature Jordan Love off the back foot fadeaway throw, which sometimes makes me pull my hair out. But when it works for him, it's just a thing of beauty. And being able to sort of be that fadeaway passer lends itself really well to the blitz, right? Because like if you're already comfortable doing those things, sort of that backyard football type of style throwing, well, then you're giving yourself an extra second to get rid of the ball. Well, you're giving yourself an extra second to, like just lean back and avoid the pressure a little bit and be able to throw the football at, varying arm angles and all that. And just Love was able to show that when he's feeling it and when he is playing that confident backyard gunslinging style, man, especially when you blitz him, like you said, and he's got one-on-one opportunities, he's going to find him. And he played very, very well, specifically over the middle of the field. It was very impressed for him in that
He
regard.
is a top 5, maybe even top 3 touch passer in the league right now.
A little bit more from Trevor Dalton Wasserman. They do the PFF show. Good breakdown of every game every week, so I don't really try to check out what they had to say. And it's funny, I think the middle of the field, it's something that we talk about, when offense is stale and when it's not working. Well, why don't they call any slants? Why don't they call any crossers? Well, I don't know. Maybe they are. It's just when offense is stale, especially in 2025, it seems like wide receivers and quarterbacks are targeting the boundary. They're targeting the outside, right? A lot of you are not incorrect in the way that you feel about the middle of the field. It felt like Donald Driver used to run a slant, get 7 or 8 yards without fail, every time. Used to be the way that it was. I just hear it a lot more when the Packers lose or when the offense isn't cooking. Christian Watson ran, he cut across the middle of the field, caught the ball against a, man coverage and easily scored. That was middle of the field. It was going right across the middle. So it does happen. I just don't know with what frequency, but Jordan Love going over the middle right now, which often includes layering throws, over a linebacker in front of a safety, or if you're more towards the hash, behind a corner in between a linebacker in front of a safety, those sorts of things. Just some interesting, on touch passes as well. And sometimes I watch other guys, like I'm watching Justin Herbert last night, like, hey man, you take a couple miles per hour off that thing every once in a while. Like, I don't think Quentin Johnston is any good, but throw him a bone every once in a while. Eric on I-90 says, you didn't give the full story on Toyotathon. You need to include his non-Toyotathon numbers, including post-Toyotathon. I'm out on the Toyotathon thing. It's funny. It's good for tweets. He's better late in the year. There you go. That's what it amounts to. LaCroix Butler, Romeo Dobbs quiet quitting for the 3rd time in 3 years. Maybe another welfare check would be good for him. I don't know. I would have to check the old 22. I don't know that the ball just didn't find him. I think Christian Watson has become, such a target earner and a magnet for the ball since coming back. And Romeo Dobbs is probably the guy that suffered most from that. Romeo Dobbs just doesn't have the traits. He doesn't get open against man coverage as well as Dontavian Wicks. He's not as fast as Matthew Golden or Christian Watson. He doesn't get yards after the catch and isn't as versatile as Jaden Reed. Like, he's probably the odd man out in this offense. I would imagine this is probably his last year in Green Bay. I don't know. We'll have to see. Gordon and Lacrosse. If it's week 15 this week and Micah Parsons still hasn't gotten a call for being held, I'm not saying he needs to get a call every drive or game, but not even one all season. I think he has a couple this season. I think that was misinformation going around social media today. Are the refs scared to call a holding penalty on him? Or is the league making the call not to call at all? Because I'm pretty sure Rashawn Gary has had a holding call this year against him. Yeah, and that's saying something. with the way that he's played, especially recently. I think Parsons has a couple. I think Tom Silverstein tweeted about this today. He's got 3 or 4, I'm pretty sure. But in some of these moments, these final drives, it's like, man, he's got an arm around his neck. And then I watched the Eagles last night, and the Eagles, like A.J. Brown had that touchdown called back because Mailata held somebody, and then they show the replay, and Troy Aikman's like, I guess. So again, the standard for certain things and the standard for quality of play is, Claire brought up in our last segment. It could just really depend game to game and crew to crew. Coyote Mike says, I think Ed Policy has made up his mind on both, and history is leaning against Matt LaFleur. The remaining games will serve to convince him to change his mind. These next 2 games are pivotal for Green Bay. I could be wrong. This is not sourced at all. At all. I've always believed since the beginning of the year that Ed Policy had every reason to want to keep this thing going, to retain Matt LaFleur, to retain Brian Gutekunst. That was his hope. That was what he wanted to happen. And that Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst were going to have to show him something to back him off of that. They were going to have to do something to say, oh, actually, we can't do that. Like we're actually going to force you. The burden of proof was on Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst to show Ed Policy, actually, you have to do something. I think he maybe hasn't made up his mind, but I think Ed Policy wants to keep this thing going. And that's just a gut feeling based on how the Packers operate. They go from one guy to another. And then when Ed Policy replaces Mark Murphy, he had been there forever. You know what I mean? Like he'd been handed the 3-ring binder long ago, as Eric on I-90 says. They don't bring in people from outside the organization to take over and to shake things up. They insert a guy who's been groomed and been waiting in the wings on the way that the Packers do business. I think the best organizations in football just have continuity and a lot of latitude between decision makers on how things are done. I think those are the best decisions in football when you have a lot of connectivity between GM and scouts and pro personnel and coaches. Like when everyone in an organization, top to bottom, is by and large operating on the same principles and the same bullet points and the same metrics, I think those are the organizations that by and large are going to be the most stable. And I think stability brings success for the most part. Like you don't see a lot of teams that go from being awful to being amazing and win a Super Bowl and then go back to being awful. Now, there are teams that have up and downs, the Eagles, but even in the year where they're not as good, like they're loaded with talent. The Niners, yes, but a big part of that over the years has been injury, right? They lose their quarterback, and they, unlike the Packers or unlike the Ravens with Lamar, haven't had the luxury of having the quarterback to keep it all stable. Talking about the Niners. Brock Purdy's been hurt, or they've gone between Jimmy Garoppolo, and then they tried to do Trey Lance. So the Niners are a little bit of a different case study. Typically, the organizations that abide by the same principles top to bottom and have continuity from one guy to the next, those are the organizations that normally succeed the most. And I think Ed Policy is a part of that. So I don't think Ed Policy is looking to come in and shake the trees. I think he came thinking, okay, let's keep this thing going unless something goes wrong this year. At least that's how I view it. But that's just a gut feeling based on how the Packers operate and how and what they believe. Let's put it that way, right? So we'll continue to monitor this. Obviously, the writing won't be on the wall, and this won't be decided until we see what happens later into the season and into the playoffs. But I thought it a good check-in point. Zach Heilprin got that ball rolling this morning on the morning show, and I thought it was worth discussing. Mike Clemens going to join us next. He's provided by the Bay Motel in Green Bay. The show as a whole today sponsored by Inn on the River in Trempealeau. You can check out their website for any information or reservation materials that you might need. InOnTheRiverWI.com, 608-534-7784. I got a view of Trempealeau from the other side of the river this last weekend because I was coming back from a wedding in the cities, and I took the Great River Road back down through, what would that be? Hastings, Red Wing, Prescott, Winona, La Crosse on 90. Very, very pretty, very scenic. It's a beautiful time of year. I mean, it's always beautiful down there, but now, especially with a little snow, the frosted tips of the trees along the river, it's a beautiful time of year. It's Sullivan Supper Club, delicious place to get a prime rib as the sun goes down over the river. I guess it's on the west side, but you know what I mean? The Trempealeau Hotel right there, the marina, it's a beautiful place to be. 608-534-7784, InOnTheRiverWI.com. Mike Clemens set to join us next on the other side of this break to talk Packers.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, welcome back. I thought of our friend Andrew Wagner today because we learned that Raul Malo passed away. He's had cancer for years. Grew up a big Mavericks fan. I don't trust anyone who didn't have the CD super colossal smash hits of the 90s, the best of the Mavericks. Cover to cover. I don't know, Andrew is a fan. Maybe we'll have to chat later this week. RIP, dude, banging band. Mike Clemens joins us now, thanks to the Bay Motel in Green Bay. He's driving back in transit back from Milwaukee. Mike, let's I guess circle back to the game on Sunday and then the presser yesterday, which was long. You guys got a lot out of Matt LaFleur yesterday at the podium. It was like 18 minutes.
Yeah, that Raul, he was a guitar player, right?
Like guitar player and singer. Yeah. Just what a band.
Singer. And then Steve Cropper from the Booker T and the MGs and Sam and Dave, the other blues guitars from the 60s passed the other day, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, for Booker T. Yep, you were correct. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking at all that. Yeah, they go in threes. Matt LaFleur talked for about 20, 30 minutes. Pretty happy to get the Bears game behind him. Christian Welch, the utility backup linebacker, special teams guy, he had a hard collision on a coverage play against the Bears the other night. He's going to be going through the concussion protocol this week.
Okay.
Don't know if he's going to be there. Dontavian Wicks, we talked about him. He started the game. So that's, that's a nice little check mark in his incentives in his contract, but he didn't have any targets in the game. And we talked about that after such a big game in Detroit with the 6 receptions and the key 4th down play. And, LaFleur pretty much let on. He's still getting over this ankle injury. So that's kind of a day-to-day thing with him. But he said, we need him for the final stretch. When Dontavian Wicks is on, that's such a nice counterpart to what else they've got between Christian Watson and now, with Jaden Reed back as well. So other than that, I don't know any other new news in terms of injuries or any other transactions that might have happened this afternoon. I haven't heard of any other changes with Green Bay in the roster. Malik Heath, released a week ago at wide receiver when Jaden Reed came back, or actually released over the weekend. But we pointed out, he said he retweeted something that was very critical about how they're using receivers, and he was disinvited to the Giants game. He sat at home, not on the team playing. Yeah, that and some sort of a traffic violation. He's a good kid, but he's had a hard year. He had an off camp, and you'd see Josh Jacobs trying to encourage him. And I maybe his year started off bad when by the second day of the draft, they drafted Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, and Savion Williams getting all those looks and jet sweeps as a kick returner, and so maybe it played with number 18's head, but he's no longer with the team.
Okay, so those are some news and notes. One thing that struck me yesterday, and I thought Matt LaFleur gave a simple answer. Maybe it's a simple question. The difference in division record from last year to this year. They went 1-5 last year. They're 4-0 so far this year. And Matt LaFleur basically chalked it up to, we found a way to win close games by not making mistakes and not putting ourselves in a hole early. What did you think of that question and that answer? And do you think that's reflective of the difference between last year and this year?
Yeah, I thought it was for not a question you would necessarily expect. That's pretty good off-season analysis, and just off the top of his head, and starting with that loss to the Bears at the end of the year, at Lambeau Field. That was just by a couple points. But yeah, shooting yourself in the foot, and that cost them in some of those games to go 1-5 last year. But now, you're 4-0. The other thing I thought, though, was interesting was, and as I talked to you guys earlier today on Bill's show, was the breakdown of the Keyshawn Nixon interception.
Yeah.
And the fact that, Evan Williams was actually supposed to be covering Cole Kmet, who released from the left tackle area at tight end, was wide open. And Keyshawn, who was tracking his guy, DJ Moore, who was crossing in motion in the backfield, out of his right eye, he looks and says, whoa, wait a minute. And he sees Kmet wide open in the end zone. He gave up on his assignment, ran over there, leaped in the air, made that interception. I think that's probably the biggest defensive play of the year. Perhaps even more significant than Micah Parsons' sack at the end of the Lions game against Jared Goff. And I was so excited on a personal standpoint for Keyshawn Nixon because the guy's had 16 deflected passes this season, which puts him near the top of the league in that category. But that was his first pick, and, it came at the right time.
Mike Clemens is here. Thanks to the Bay Motel in Green Bay. This is a battle that I fight a little bit. I don't think Keyshawn Nixon is the best corner in the world, Mike. But, he gives up a pass or two in a game. He gets caught with a tough penalty. And I look on Twitter, and Packers fans, they just beat this guy up. I think he's been pretty outstanding in the role they've asked him to play without a ton of depth behind him. You know what I mean? It's not like that room is deep and talented. He's kind of needed to be a presence. And Mike, what I actually really like about him is he hits. A lot of corners aren't willing to hit, especially as they get older. And he's willing to come up. He blew up that play to DJ Moore behind the line of scrimmage. Like, I think Keyshawn Nixon's been way better than even optimistic Packers fans could have expected this year, even if people don't always talk about him like that.
Right. Micah Parsons teasing him, yeah, Keyshawn, man, he's got small man syndrome,
Yeah.
But I mean, he is, by the way, his upper body, it's like 3X over in his time in Green Bay. He gets bigger every year. The guns get bigger. He's a shorter dude, but he can take a punch. So between showing the fearlessness as a kick returner and running right up there for a collision, and then helping out on coverage teams and making some great tackles, then sort of playing the nickel position at a dime, and now them trusting him, on the corner, that was a pretty big deal. And don't forget, this is the year where the organization said, enough of Jair Alexander. We're not going to play this game anymore. And the poor man's got, chronic knee problems, which became revealed, in his time with the Ravens. And where'd he go after that? Was it the Jets?
Well, no, I think they traded him to the Eagles, and then
the Eagles. That's
stepped
right.
away from football.
He was at the Eagles for like 10 days and all excited because, Philly's his hometown, and then just said, you know what, I'm going to retire. I don't know if that just means he's going to take a timeout and see if the knee ever comes back. But, he's tired of draining to get on the practice field. So anyway, they made that huge decision. But they got Nate Hobbs from the Raiders, a guy that these guys knew. And, solid, hard-hitting guy, paid him a lot of money. Knee surgery, during training camp and one other incident, and he hasn't been available. So, Carrington Valentine has been able to step up. And fortunately, they have not had, too many injuries since then. I think Keyshawn had to leave for a concussion there for a while. But, yeah, that they've gotten by. They've gotten by. But, Nixon's strong enough. And, again, during the draft, and when they were looking at draft picks or draft picks that did not work out, that they had invested in corner, Brian Gutekunst once said from the podium during the draft, saying, someone said, don't you need to focus on getting one of those shutdown corners for this defense? He says, I got news for you. There's no such thing as a shutdown corner anymore in the NFL because of the rules.
Yeah.
And that's like one of those template kinds of philosophies. Like, don't expect so much out of that position, or don't pay for that much. But these guys are going to give up explosive gains by the very fact of the challenges they face, of pass interference, the talent they're up against, etc. And I asked him that specifically last February, knowing that the Jair thing will probably be an issue coming up. I said, you said this a couple of years. You still believe in that? He says, yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
He doesn't think there's such a thing as a shutdown corner. So if you can get your money's worth out of Keyshawn Nixon, that's good enough.
Well, and I wouldn't pay corners. I wouldn't pay him. They're like relievers. They're too volatile. One injury can completely change their career. 1 year they're great. The next year they're not. They can lose speed quickly. The soft tissue injuries mount. Sometimes I think the Packers are flying a little close to the sun, Mike, with a lack of depth at that position. But I don't disagree with the general philosophy that you're describing for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So you're going to play the Broncos. They've won 10 games in a row. Now 4 of those wins are against the Raiders, the struggling Commanders, and the struggling Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
So, some of the national guys are already hyping like, this could be a preview to Super Bowl 60 between the Packers and the Broncos. Simmer down. Even though, the Patriots and the Denver Broncos are, at the top of the AFC as potential seeds. But, Bo Nix at quarterback, I think last time I checked, he's up to like 9 picks, 20-some touchdowns. He runs a lot.
Yep.
A running game. They've had their fair share of guys end up on injured reserve on offense. I think they've done pretty good defensively. But, you're against Patrick Surtain at corner, Nick Pitino at strong side linebacker, Dre Greenlaw, who used to be with the 49ers. His time had sort of run out there. But it's a tough defense. They were bothering people last year. They were tough for Green Bay during a joint practice session in Denver in 24, and then it's come to fruition this year. And then it's the changeover. You had John Elway, the Hall of Fame quarterback, as president of the team there. He brings in Peyton Manning. They go to 2 Super Bowls. Peyton wins the second one after losing the first one to the Seahawks, and that's all good. But then it was time to sort of flush out the team, and they went through a couple coaches, and then when Sean Payton had done his time with the Saints, and Drew Brees was going to retire, so he stepped down, did some broadcasting. Mm-hmm. You'd be around him sometimes at Super Bowl, and he'd gather people around and love to talk football. Sometimes he can be, though, kind of standoffish and arrogant. He's a smart guy, a good communicator. He comes back into Denver, and he goes through that 1 year inheriting Russell Wilson at quarterback. So this was 2 years ago. We're at Combine, and a reporter that I keep in contact with the Broncos, which reminds me, I got to call him tomorrow. He used to cover here in Wisconsin, then Vikings. He covers Broncos. Huh?
Thomason?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We got him and me and Gary Wolfwell had some lunch. And so Gary said, Mike, tell him about, oh yeah. So I said, yeah, we met with Brian Gutekunst. Oh, how'd that go? Very good. We met at Team Hotel, 1 hour in the conference room, doors locked, some of it off record, real good meeting. How about you guys? What's Sean Payton like? He took us out to dinner. Really? Yeah. Well, how did that go? Well, it was all off the record. Oh. And he paused and he goes, it lasted 5 hours, Mike. 5 hours. I'm like, oh my God. That was all Russell Wilson stories for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Off the record. He got the record straight as to what the hell the year before had been with Russell Wilson. So like 2 days later, you get down to Combine early because you can talk to some of these guys then. But after that, these teams, these front offices, they're busy. They got to interview 20 players. They got to, go inside Lucas Oil and time guys. They're busy for the rest of the week. But I ran into Brian Gutekunst and hey, Mike, how's it going? I said, fine. I said, hey, thanks again for the other day. Oh, sure, no problem. And I said, hey, Broncos, they took their reporters out to dinner. Oh, really? He was kind of laughing. And I said, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Sean Payton, yeah. You know how long their lesson? 5 hours. And his jaw dropped. He goes, 5 hours. And then he laughed because he got the joke. And all he said to me was, all we got to do is sign Jordan, man. We ain't got no drama like that.
Yeah,
and that was like last year.
Nothing to be cleared up, about the past or anything that could be up in the air.
But see, that's the Packers. By the time they get down to Combine, they pretty much have got the script written. What are their options? What are their scenarios? And then they go into free agency, see how that goes, and they go into the draft to see how that. But by Combine, they pretty much know how the year's going to go.
Yeah, you get a good sense for all of this. Well, I mean, you've covered games out in Denver before, Mike. It's a challenging place to play. Do you have any first blush thoughts about Sunday, a team that's won 10 or 11 in a row, but it seems like they've been gettable in a lot of these wins. I'm more excited about the Packers' chances out there than I would have been, let's say, a month and a half ago.
Very physical up front. Very physical.
Yeah.
Between the offense and the defensive front of the Broncos. So that's going to be the problem to solve. And then there's always the mile high thing, Hey, what's weird is I said, is this for real? No, it's for real. You know what's really weird about the elevation of that stadium? If it's a sunny day, it's really bright.
Yeah, sun's hot.
But if it's bright, it's like you got to have a visor or sunglasses. Like, what is that? Dude, you're at a higher elevation. Really? I mean, it's noticeable. It's almost like flash bulb in your face bright.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things. And the last time the Packers played there, they played them close, but it was Russell Wilson and those guys won. Matter of fact, the Packers have not won in Denver since 2007. And do you know what game that was? It was Brett against Jay Cutler. It goes into overtime, and it's one of my all-time favorite stories because Javon Walker, who had been drafted by the Packers, the last Packer was, drafted in the first round by Green Bay 20-some years ago, had bounced around, and he ended up with Denver, and then he was on IR because he had another knee injury, like what pretty much ended his career in Green Bay. He's up in the press box watching in this sort of empty section next to the press box. And I could see him up there walking around, his silhouette, because I'd seen him before I went down the field. At the end of the game, they go to overtime. I'm standing right behind the Packers as they take the ball to start overtime. And I'm right under the goalpost, and I'm watching Brett. And in the first play of the overtime, I see him nod his head. He's got Greg Jennings wide left, said, Hut, takes the ball, little play action, looks to his right, plants foot, throws the ball 55 yards in the air down the left sideline. Jennings has got one-on-one. He catches it and runs it in for the touchdown. And they, the Monday Night Football crew just goes crazy, and Packers win that way in overtime. And I look up into that window, and I see Javon Watkins stand up, his silhouette turn around, go out into the lighted hallway, and like, damn,
that was
Green
that.
Bay, they won again.
Yep.
Yeah, it was such a moment. That's the last time that Packers won a game in Denver.
Well, and hopefully Dave Schrader said earlier, he joined Bill from WBAY. He's like, yeah, they just play out there more often now. You know what I mean? It's not such a rare occurrence because of the expanded schedule. So hopefully the Packers, maybe they were there 2 years ago. They played a preseason game there. Hopefully they have a good shot, and maybe the Broncos are due to lose one of these close games. We'll have to see. Mike, appreciate it. We will hear from you on the Huddle tomorrow night.
Will do. Talk to you then. Thank you, Grant.
No, thank you, Mike. Appreciate you as always. The Bay Motel in Green Bay sponsors his appearances. Quiet, cozy, comfortable, and less than a mile from Lambeau Field. So make your reservations, baymotelgreenbay.com. We'll come back, wrap up final segment of the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Last couple of minutes here, Wisco Sports Show. It's funny, Bill brought this up earlier today. He's like, I think the Packers are favored in Denver this week. I said, no. ESPN Bet or whatever they draw. I don't think ESPN Bet exists anymore, but whatever book they're drawing from. I checked earlier. Yeah, Packers 2.5-point favorites. I think there's a couple things at play. I think the Packers have always, throughout the year, been thought of very highly in the betting markets. I mean, I remember they lost to the Panthers, and then they come back to play the Eagles next week, and I think they were like 3.5-point favorites at home. Fans like, how could that be? Well, the Packers again are thought of as, legit contenders in the eyes of the betting public or in the betting markets. I talked about this with Brian and Gene on Rock Mornings this morning. I join them every Tuesday, and I'm like, yeah, the Broncos are awesome. Their roster is awesome. Everybody hits hard. Everybody's fast. Everybody kicks ass. And the altitude is a bear to deal with. But then I watched the Broncos. The sum of the parts does not seem to be adding up to what it should, considering all the talent they have. Right? It's not just me. And it seems like they've been skirting by with a lot of close wins. And I'm not faulting them for that, because there are a couple games I wish the Packers would have had close wins. I would have loved a close win against the Cowboys or the Browns or the Panthers. Would have been all about that, or the Eagles. So it's not a bad thing. It seems at some point the Broncos might be due, and I'm just hoping that takes place this weekend. I guess that's my hope. Because I don't think on a neutral the Packers are a more talented field than the Broncos. That's also a reflection of the quarterback, right? Like, Jordan Love's playing really, really well right now. Probably at a top 5, top 3 level. That doesn't mean I'm telling you that he's one of the top 3 best quarterbacks in football. I'm telling you that that's the level at which he's playing. Those are two different things, right? So that's got to be a factor in that number as well. The Packers 2.5-point favorites going into Denver. To Mike Clemens' point, a place they haven't won since 2007. Hopefully they're more used to it than they used to be, because they play them more often than every 8 years with the expanded, uncommon scheduling. All right, we'll pick this up tomorrow. Jesse Temple will be here. Maybe talk a little bit more about the college football playoff. The final 25 selections. R.I.P. Raul Malo. Love this man. All right, we'll pick this up tomorrow. Thank you for listening always.